Ethan Walker sat alone in his penthouse, the glittering Chicago skyline stretching endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. His life was a portrait of success, a billion-dollar empire, a reputation as one of the most renowned financial investors in the country, and a meticulously curated world of tailored suits, a spotless home and a perfectly aligned schedule. Yet, amidst all this perfection, a hollow emptiness lingered, a loneliness that even the most extravagant luxuries could not mask. That evening, as he sorted through his emails, his gaze froze on a subject line that seemed to pulse with the weight of the past. "We need to talk, Clara." For the first time in years, Ethan's polished composure slipped. The carefully constructed fortress of his life cracked, letting in a flood of uncertainty and memories he had buried long ago. Claire, his ex-wife. Her name alone was enough to stir a storm within him. She hadn't reached out since the day she walked away from their marriage 5 years ago. The email was short, direct, and offered no explanation, only a request to meet. Ethan's mind raced with questions. What could she possibly want after all this time? Why now? 5 years earlier, Ethan had thought he had everything: a celebrated career and a marriage to Clara, the woman he once loved with every part of his being. She had been his opposite in every way, a free-spirited artist who thrived on simplicity and found joy in life's small wonders. Where Ethan's world revolved around numbers and the relentless demands of his career, Clara's revolved around passion, creativity, and connection. It was this very contrast that had drawn them together, but it was also what tore them apart. Ethan's work always came first, and Clara's pleas for more time together were met with vague promises he never kept. Their relationship unraveled slowly, each missed moment and broken promise eroding the bond they once shared. The breaking point came during a heated argument when Clara, her voice trembling with emotion, told him she felt like a shadow in his life. Soon after, she left, taking with her the warmth and vitality she had brought into his world. Now, staring at her message, Ethan felt a wave of confusion and unease. Was this a chance to make amends? Or would it only reopen wounds too deep to heal? After moments of hesitation, he replied, agreeing to meet. Clara chose a small cafe in an artist's neighborhood on the south side of the city. The cafe was intimate, tucked away on a quiet street, its air filled with the comforting aroma of roasted coffee and freshly baked pastries. Ethan spotted Clara almost immediately, seated by the window, her figure framed by the soft afternoon light. She was still as beautiful as he remembered, though her face bore the marks of time and something heavier. Her piercing eyes, however, remained the same, and they sent a pang through his chest. "Thank you for coming," Clara began, her voice steady but tinged with hesitation. Ethan sat across from her, his heart racing as he tried to maintain his composure. "What's going on, Clara? Why did you want to meet?" he asked, his voice lined with both concern and curiosity. Clara hesitated, her gaze dropping for a moment before meeting his. "Ethan," she began softly, "after we divorced, I found out I was pregnant." The words struck Ethan like a thunderclap, rendering him speechless. The world around him seemed to blur as his mind reeled. "What are you saying?" he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Her name is Lily," Clara continued, her tone resolute yet tender. "She's 4 years old now, Ethan, and she has your blue eyes." A torrent of emotions surged through Ethan: shock, regret, a deep sense of responsibility. But Clara wasn't finished. "I needed to tell you this because I don't have much time left," she said, her voice breaking slightly. Her hands trembled as she clutched her coffee cup. "What do you mean?" Ethan asked, his voice heavy with dread. "I've been diagnosed with cancer," Clara confessed quietly. "The treatments are ongoing, but it's going to be a long battle. I can't do this alone. I need you to take care of Lily if I can't." Ethan's world shifted on its axis. Sitting before him was the woman he had once loved, burdened with pain and fear, and now he had a daughter, a part of himself he had never known. Clenching his fists, he felt a surge of determination. His life was about to change forever and he couldn't turn away from it. The next day, Ethan stood in front of the worn wooden door of Clara and Lily's small apartment. His heart pounded as anxiety and anticipation coursed through him. He had no idea what to expect. He had never been a father, and the weight of this revelation still pressed heavily on him. When the door opened, Clara greeted him with a faint smile. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. The apartment was small but brimming with warmth. Childlike drawings adorned the walls, and a small easel in the corner was splattered with watercolors, a glimpse into Lily's creative world. Ethan's eyes quickly found her, sitting cross-legged on a rug, engrossed in a puzzle. She had soft brown hair and striking blue eyes, his eyes. It was like looking at a younger version of himself, yet with an innocence that made his chest ache. "Lily," Clara called gently. The little girl looked up, her eyes curious but wary. "This is Ethan," Clara continued, her voice soft. "He's your dad." Lily's gaze shifted to Ethan, studying him carefully. "Hi Lily," Ethan said, his voice trembling but warm. "I'm so happy to meet you." The little girl didn't respond, her expression unreadable. After a moment she returned to her puzzle. Ethan's heart sank slightly, but he reminded himself that trust would take time. Looking at Lily, surrounded by the warmth of her small world, Ethan knew one thing for certain. His life would never be the same again. And for the first time he felt ready to embrace the unknown. Ethan sat down on the soft rug beside Lily, the tension in the room palpable. He glanced at the puzzle pieces scattered before her, carefully picking one up with a gentle smile. "What are you building there?" "Can I help?" he asked, his voice warm and inviting. At first, Lily didn't react, her tiny fingers continuing to work silently. But Ethan stayed patient, quietly assisting as she pieced together the fragments. "It's a castle," Lily finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's heart lifted at her response. "A beautiful castle," he replied, his tone full of admiration. Slowly but surely Lily's guarded demeanor began to soften. Moments later she let out a small giggle as Ethan, feigning cluelessness, deliberately placed a piece in the wrong spot. Her laughter was a melody Ethan hadn't known his soul was aching for, and it filled the room with a joy he hadn't experienced in years. From across the room, Clara watched them with glistening eyes, her heart brimming with a fragile yet growing hope. For the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan felt something awaken within him. A realization that Lily wasn't just his responsibility. She was his second chance, his opportunity to rewrite the mistakes of his past and embrace a new kind of love, one he had never truly known before. In the days that followed, Ethan's life took on a rhythm he had never imagined. Balancing the unrelenting demands of his career with his newfound role as a father and caretaker was an uphill battle. His financial firm was at a critical juncture, with a multi-billion-dollar deal hanging in the balance. Calls from his team flooded in, emails requiring his immediate attention piled up, and high-stakes strategy meetings demanded his presence. Yet for the first time Ethan began to push back. He prioritized coming home early, helping Lily with her homework, and sitting by Clara's side when the effects of her chemotherapy left her exhausted. Clara's health was fragile, and Ethan felt the weight of worry press heavily on his chest. Determined to ensure she had the best care, he hired a private nurse and relied on Clara's elderly neighbor, a kind woman who often stepped in to watch Lily when work called him away unexpectedly. One evening, as Ethan read Lily a bedtime story, her small voice broke through his focus. "Will you always be here, Daddy?" she asked, her wide blue eyes looking up at him with an innocence that made his heart ache. Ethan paused, the simplicity of her question carrying a weight that nearly overwhelmed him. "I'll always be here, Lily," he promised, his voice steady but thick with emotion. In that moment he realized just how much he had already changed. The small moments, Lily's arms wrapping around him in a hug, Clara's faint smile even in her weakest state, reminded him of a truth he had long overlooked. Family wasn't a burden. It was a gift, the most precious thing he had ever been given. During a pivotal strategy meeting at work, as his colleagues debated the final steps of the deal, Ethan raised his voice to interrupt. "We'll close this deal," he said firmly, "but not by sacrificing everything else. Balance is the key." The clarity in his words echoed the transformation taking place in his personal life. Balance, he realized, was what made everything whole. The morning of Clara's surgery was somber, the soft patter of rain matching the heavy mood in the hospital. Ethan sat in the waiting area, a cup of coffee growing cold in his hands as nerves gnawed at him. Lily sat beside him, clutching a colorful drawing she had made the night before. It was a picture of their family, Ethan, Clara, and herself, standing together in a bright, cheerful garden. She handed it to Ethan, her voice soft and full of hope. "This is our family, Daddy. I made it for Mommy so she can get better." Ethan stared at the drawing, his chest tightening as tears welled in his eyes. In Lily's innocent world, they were still a family, a bond he had let slip away but was now determined to mend. When the surgeon finally emerged, looking tired but wearing a reassuring smile, Ethan let out a shaky breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The surgery had gone well. It wasn't the end of Clara's battle, but it was a step forward. As they entered Clara's hospital room, Lily ran to her mother's side, wrapping her small arms around her. Watching them, Ethan felt a profound realization take hold. The true value of life wasn't in accomplishments or accolades, It was in these fleeting, beautiful moments of love and connection. From that day forward, Ethan restructured his life. He delegated more responsibilities at work, placing trust in his colleagues so he could focus on what truly mattered. His family needed him and he wouldn't let them down again. Months passed and the atmosphere in their small apartment began to transform. Clara, though still in recovery, had regained her strength. She smiled more, spent time playing with Lily, and even returned to painting, a passion she thought she might never revisit. Lily, now completely comfortable with Ethan, no longer hesitated to express her affection. Every evening she would wait by the door, eager to share stories about her day at school. The three of them often spent their nights together on the couch, reading books or watching Lily's favorite animated movies. Ethan, having stepped back from his once obsessive work schedule, learned to savor these simple yet profoundly meaningful moments. He was no longer the man ruled by his career but a father, a companion, and a truly present figure in their lives. One crisp morning they took a walk in the park near their home. Lily ran ahead, clutching a small ball, her laughter ringing through the air. Ethan and Clara strolled behind, their pace slow and unhurried. Clara turned to him, her voice soft. "Thank you, Ethan," she said, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you for coming back." Ethan simply smiled, gently squeezing her hand as the sun warmed their faces. In that moment he felt the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter filled with love, forgiveness, and hope. For the first time in years, his life wasn't defined by numbers or ambition but by the people who truly mattered. And in their presence, he found a happiness he never knew he was missing. Ethan prepared small, thoughtful meals for Clara whenever she felt too tired, ensuring she took her medication on time and adding a sprinkle of humor to brighten even the most challenging days. One evening, as he carried a steaming bowl of soup into the living room, he asked with a mischievous grin, "Do you think this soup would taste better if I added sugar?" Clara, though weak, chuckled softly. "Ethan, it's soup, not tea." He winked in reply. "Guess I'll save the sugar for the tea then." Moments like these, light-hearted and tender, softened the weight of their struggles, reminding Clara that she wasn't alone in her fight. Lily, too, brought an abundance of joy into their lives. One afternoon, she tugged Ethan onto the couch, clutching her sketch pad with a determined look in her bright blue eyes. "Daddy, I'm going to draw you," she announced, her small hands flipping open the pad. "But you have to stay still. No moving." Ethan smiled, trying his best to obey, though he shifted slightly to adjust his posture. Lily frowned, narrowing her eyes. "Daddy, do you even know what stay still means?" Laughing, Ethan threw up his hands. "Guess you'll have to teach me." As the days passed, their bond grew deeper, and laughter became the soundtrack of their home. One evening after dinner, Ethan knelt in front of Clara, a small, sparkling ring in his hand. It wasn't extravagant but simple and stunning, perfectly reflecting the moment. "Clara," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I lost you once because of my foolish mistakes. But now, I know nothing matters more than family. I want to start over. Will you marry me again?" Tears filled Clara's eyes as she gazed at him, her voice trembling. "Yes, Ethan. I will." For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The weight of their past mistakes lifted, replaced by hope and love. Lily, who had been watching intently, jumped up, cheering. "So, we'll all be together forever now?" Clara pulled Ethan into a gentle embrace, her tears flowing freely as she whispered, "I never thought we'd get here. Thank you for not giving up on us." The next day, Ethan brought Clara and Lily to his penthouse. It was no longer the cold, sterile space it once was. Laughter now echoed in the halls and Lily's colorful drawings were pinned to the walls, transforming the once lonely apartment into a warm, loving home. The smell of Clara's freshly baked cookies filled the kitchen, and the dining table became the center of their family life, hosting dinners filled with stories and laughter. Ethan wasn't just a devoted father, he was also Clara's unwavering partner. Weekends were reserved for family outings, with Lily's favorite destination being the zoo. Her squeals of delight at the giraffes nibbling on leaves filled the air, her excitement contagious. One afternoon, the three of them sat on the living room floor, piecing together a giant puzzle. Ethan pretended to struggle with the simplest pieces, eliciting fits of giggles from Lily. "Daddy, you're the silliest grown-up ever," she exclaimed, throwing her tiny arms around him. Clara watched the scene unfold, her smile radiant with contentment. Slowly she began to rediscover herself. With Ethan's encouragement, she took on small interior design projects, regaining confidence in her talent. Ethan never missed an opportunity to remind her of her brilliance, telling her it hadn't faded, it had only been waiting for its moment to shine again. Evenings became their cherished tradition. The three of them would sit by the large window, gazing out at the city's twinkling lights. Lily would tell imaginative, whimsical stories, her innocent sparking laughter that filled the room. Clara, nestled under Ethan's arm, would listen with a smile, her heart full of gratitude. Ethan, in those quiet moments, would reflect on everything he had gained. This was what he had been missing, a real home built on love and connection. Their life wasn't perfect. Lily had her stubborn moments and Ethan occasionally forgot small things. But none of that mattered. What they shared was something deeper, a love that grew stronger with every passing day. Their home became a canvas of memories, painted with laughter, forgiveness, and hope. It wasn't just a house anymore, it was a life. Ethan, Clara, and Lily had built something extraordinary, one beautiful moment at a time.